Good morning, grading students. Welcome to another fun and exciting day to learn science, only here at Valenzuela Live. Today is our part 2 in discussing how energy from volcanoes made it up for human use. It is found on most essential learning competencies crafted by the Department of Education. And for today's objective, we have first, infer on the differences between the types of geothermal power plants. Next, discuss how geothermal power plant works. Third, explain how a geothermal energy is transformed into electrical energy. Fourth, identify the advantages and disadvantages of using geothermal energy. And lastly, advocates on the wise energy consumption and conservation. It's a full-packed topic, so get ready your notebook and pen to jot down notes. Let's begin with recalling the previous topic we have been discussed last time. Geothermal energy is heat that is generated within the earth. As what the word geothermal suggests, geo means earth and thermal means heat in Greek. It is a renewable resource that can be harvested for human use. We also find out that there are several geothermal power plants now here in our country. One of which is the Bacman Geothermal Power Plant, located in Albay and Sorsogon in the island of Luzon. There is also a functional geothermal power plant in Visayas named Malitbog Geothermal Power Plant, found in Leyte Province. Also, the Mount Apo Geothermal Power Plant that supplies electricity in the provinces of Davao Region and Kidapawan. Most of our geothermal power plants here in our country can be found near on an active volcano. It is possible because our country belongs to an area of earthquake and volcanic activity seems to be normal. It's called Pacific Ring of Fire. Now that we have the idea on what is a geothermal power plant and where can we find it, let's answer the question about what are the different types of geothermal power plants. Actually, there are 3 types of geothermal power plants. First on our list is called dry steam power plants. Dry steam power plants take advantage of natural underground sources of steam. The steam is piped directly to a power plant where it uses fuel the turbines and generate electricity. Dry steam is the oldest type of power plant to generate electricity using geothermal energy. The first dry steam power plant was constructed in Larderello, Italy in 1911. Today, the dry steam power plant at Larderello continues to supply electricity to more than 1 million of residents. Amazing, right? So, how this power plant works? The steam travels directly to a turbine, which drives a generator that produces electricity. eliminates the need to burn fossil fuels to run that turbine. Also eliminating the need to transport and store fuels. It only means that it creates less greenhouse gases that speeds up the global warming and climate change. Surely, geothermal energy is one of the cleanest forms of energy that we can extract naturally. Next type of geothermal power plant is called flash steam power plant. Flash steam power plants use naturally occurring sources of underground hot water and steam. Water that is hotter than 182 degrees Celsius is pumped into a low pressure area where some of the water flashes or evaporates rapidly into steam and is funneled out to power its turbine and generate electricity eventually. Any remaining water can be flushed in a separate tank to extract more energy. Flash steam power plants are the most common type of geothermal power plants. The volcanically active island nation of Iceland supplies nearly all its electrical needs through a series of flash steam geothermal power plants. Steam and excess warm water produced by the flash steam process heat icy sidewalks and parking lots in the frigid Arctic winter. Philippine archipelago also sit over a tectonically active area called the Ring of Fire that rims the Pacific Ocean. Government and industry in the Philippines have invested in flash steam power plants, and many provinces in our country enjoys their cheap and clean source of energy. Today, our country is the second only next to the Indonesia in its use and production of geothermal energy in Southeast Asia alone. And we are third in the whole worldwide. Okay? In fact, the largest single geothermal power plant is a flash steam facility in Malitbog in the province of Leyte. And the third and last type of the geothermal power plant is called the binary cycle power plant. Binary cycle geothermal power generation plants differ from dry steam and flash steam system in that the water or steam from the geothermal reservoir never comes in contact with the turbine or generator units. Low to moderately heated geothermal fluids and is secondary. Hence, binary fluid with a much lower boiling point that water passes through a heat exchanger. Heat from the geothermal fluids causes the secondary fluid to flash to vapor, which then drives the turbines and subsequently the generators. Binary cycle power plants are closed-loop system and virtually nothing except water vapor is emitted to the atmosphere because resources below 150 degrees Celsius represent the most common geothermal resource. A significant proportion of geothermal electricity in the future could come from binary cycle power plants. the WOW Geothermal Facility in the U.S. state of Nevada uses the binary cycle to generate electricity. The organic compound used at the facility is an industrial. This refrigerant has a much lower boiling point than water, meaning it is converted into a gas at low temperatures. The gas fuels the turbines, which are connected to electrical generators. Those are the three types of geothermal power plants that can supply an electricity to every household. But another question is, how are those power plants works? At a geothermal power plant, wells are drilled deep into the earth to pump steam or hot water to the surface. You're most likely to find one of these power plants in an area that has a lot of hot springs, geysers, or volcanic activity, because these are the places where the earth is particularly hot just below the surface. The procedure is more likely or most likely a cycle in which first, hot water is pumped from deep underground through a well under high pressure. Next, when the water reaches the surface, the pressure is dropped, which causes the water to turn into steam. The steam spins the turbine, which is connected to the generator that produces electricity. Also, the steam cools off in a cooling tower and condenses back to water. And lastly, the cooled water is pumped back into the earth to begin the process once again. This is a continuous cycle and the turbine spins rapidly. The more electricity was produced, the generator that eventually will supply to every household. This electric consumption is very cheap. As what we discussed last time, it will only cost you 3 pesos and 50 centavos to 4 pesos and 50 centavos per kilowatt hour. However, some people do not keen an eye on geothermal energy because harvesting geothermal energy still poses many challenges, like process. Number one, the process of injecting high pressure streams of water into earth can result in minor seismic activities or small earthquakes. Next, geothermal power plants have been linked to subsidence or the slow sinking of land. This happens as the underground structures collapse upon themselves. This can lead to damaged pipelines, roadways, buildings, and natural drainage systems. Geothermal power plants can release also small amount of greenhouse gases such as hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide, but not as great as the fuels. These harmful substances can be leaked to water sources only if the geothermal system is not properly insulated or maintained. Although the process requires almost no fuels to run, the initial cost of installing geothermal technology is expensive. Developing countries may not have the sophisticated infrastructure, startup costs to invest in a geothermal power plant. Several facilities in the Philippines, for example, were made possible by investments from American industry and government agencies. Today, the plants are Philippine-owned and operated. But there are many advantages as well in using geothermal energy, either directly or indirectly. First of which is geothermal energy is renewable. It is not a fossil fuel that will be eventually used up. The Earth is continuously radiating heat out from its core and will continue to do so for billions of years. Next, some form of geothermal energy can be accessed and harvested anywhere in the world. Another one is using geothermal energy is relatively clean. Most systems only emits water vapor, although some emits very small amount of sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxide, and particulates. Geothermal power plants also can last for decades. Okay? See the Lagderelio and possibly centuries if the reservoir is managed properly. The amount of extracted energy can be balanced with the rock's rate and renewing its heat. This means that they can work in the summer or winter or not dependent in or on changing factors such as presence of wind or sun. Geothermal power plants produce electricity or heat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Okay? That is the meaning of the base load. And lastly, it is relatively cheap. So if we are going to review your answers last week to the question, is it good that we change our energy sources like electricity consumption into this geothermal energy? What do you think? Is it the right one? Do we need to replace our fossil fuels consumption to this kind of renewable energy, knowing that it has a positive and negative effects? What do you think? If we are keen on the global situation about the global warming and climate change, maybe we can start a little bit into this one. Remember that fossil fuels are limited and can bring a drastic change in our environment, which we might feel further soon. Before we end this topic, here is another question for you to ponder upon. There is no wrong answers here. Just comment down below your answer and we, your teachers, will read about it. The question is, since Philippines, our country, is rich in natural resources and a very good site of geothermal exploration, do we need to shift into this kind of energy sources? Why did you say so? This has been your live stream teacher saying lamang ang may alam. Till next time.